Welcome back. You're in the arena. Now, my great-grandfather was in some little village in Ukraine, Poland, running away from Cossacks. But my next guest, her great-grandfather, was President of the United States of America. Margaret Hoover, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Michael.
Before we get on to why you're here, you're an expert on American politics. Is it a help or a hindrance to have a great-grandfather who was, well, the most powerful man in the world, I suppose?
Well, I would also add, though, that before he was President of the United States, he was a pioneer from a pioneer frontier town in Iowa, and he was orphaned at the age of 9 and entirely self-made. So while your great-grandfather may have been in a small town in the Cossacks, mine also started quite small himself.
Okay,
so that's part of the point of the book, is that he wrote a book called American Individualism, which my book is also titled after, which is about the power also in Canada, but also in the United States, of one to create their own destiny.
Okay, so in future, when I have you on the show, I'll introduce you as great-granddaughter of some pioneer kid, something or other. Tell us a bit more about the book, please.
So the book is called American Individualism, How a New Generation of Conservatives Can Save the Republican Party. And you're right, this is very U.S.-centric, but there's a phenomenon that's happened in the U.S. where the 30 and unders, the millennial generation, are absolutely, definitively not Republicans. And partisan identity tends to solidify after 3 presidential election cycles. Yeah. Well, this cohort voted very strongly for John Kerry in 2004, definitively for Barack Obama in 2008. And the GOP, if they want to make inroads for this with this generation, basically has 15 months to do it, or else these kids are going to be voting something other than Republican for the rest of their lives.
Now, what I'm trying to put a Canadian context on this, I'm sort of detecting red Toryism, as we call it. We have a Conservative government that on issues such as abortion, homosexuality and so on, it will not touch these issues in a country which is very liberal, I would say very wrong, but very liberal on these subjects. Are you calling then for American conservatism to become more gay-friendly, pro-choice, more progressive on social issues?
Well, that's one of the things I talk about in the book. I try to characterize this generation so that Republicans know how to talk to them. And the fact is, this generation is the most diverse and least traditional generation in American history. They are 40% non-white, and they are the only cohort where over half of them just have no issues with sexual orientation. In fact, they are in favor of same-sex marriage. And this is something that I was quite involved in the efforts here in New York State. Many, even in the U.S., don't know that New York State, with a Republican state Senate, voted through its legislative action to allow same-sex marriage to begin legally here in the state of New York. This is, I will argue, consistent with the Republican tradition of individual freedom and individual liberty. You know, the Republican Party in the U.S., a little different from the conservative movement in Canada, began as an abolitionist party. I mean, it gave steam to the suffrage movement in the United States. Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Susan B. Anthony, rather, when she voted illegally in 1872, voted a straight Republican ticket because the Republican Party was the party of empowering disenfranchised minorities. So I actually don't think this is historically inconsistent to argue, but you're right. Social issues is one of a few areas where youth simply aren't connecting to the Republican Party.
I don't want to obsess about that one issue. However, a party committed to freeing people of color who simply because of their race are treated like animals is a little different from saying that the institution of marriage should apply for the first time in human history to people of the same gender.
Well, there's an argument to be made that constitutionally, the Supreme Court has argued 14 times since 1888 that marriage is a fundamental constitutional right. Fundamentals such as, our other fundamental rights include freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of the press. And if prisoners, based on a U.S. Supreme Court decision in 1987 in Turner versus Safely, if prisoners are allowed to marry legally, it's hard to understand how, gay individuals who are law-abiding in every sense of the word aren't afforded the same rights. So this is a debate in the U.S. about what a constitutional right is. Of course, I'm not likening homosexuality to slavery in any way.
Yeah, I think gay people have the right to do anything they want to do. I don't think marriage is a right. I think it's a social institution. However, let's move on to other issues. You need a leader. Barack Obama is, peace be upon him, by the way, is an extremely vulnerable president at this stage, but you haven't got a leader who can unite even the conservative movement, let alone the mass of American people.
Well, and the youth were critical to his election. I mean, one of the things that folks don't totally understand, Barack Obama in the United States won the election by 10 million raw votes, but in the 30 and under cohort, he won it by 8 million raw votes. The youth were integral to his election, and there are very strong signs that they've been disappointed. His approval rating amongst this cohort has dropped 18 percentage points since January of 2009. In addition, this cohort is 37% unemployed and underemployed. They don't have jobs, the economy doesn't seem to be getting better, and there's a strong case that can be made that his fiscal policies have failed. But the catch, yes, we don't have a candidate. The key to whoever the nominee is to not personalizing and simply speaking in ideological terms against Barack Obama, because he is still quite favorable. He's still, even despite that 18 percentage approval rating drop, he still has a 55% favorability rating with 30 and unders. So the key with this demographic, because they're pragmatic, not ideological, is to make a proactive, positive, alternative case for pro-growth economic agenda, why it'll work, why it's worth a try, and what has not worked with the Obama policies.
All sounds wonderful in many ways, is wonderful. I agree, let's fight an election on ideology and points of view, but you do need one person, iconic or not, to come forward to represent and articulate these views. And having listened to you for the past few minutes, I don't think it's going to be anyone called Michelle or Sarah, is it for you?
Michelle who? No, the reality is you're right. Parties are redefined in the context of candidacies, absolutely. And people talk, Republicans often say, well, we can't get the youth vote anyway, so let's not worry about it. Well, that ignores our best history. Ronald Reagan won the youth vote by 20% in 1984. He brought an entire generation into the Republican Revolution. He was this candidate that redefined the party and brought a new generation into it. You're right, there is no Ronald Reagan waiting in the wings, but what I hope is that my book will be a roadmap for whoever the nominee is, so that they can know who this young group is and really speak to them directly, connect the issues to them. Look, this spending in Washington, this is generational theft. If you connect the dots to them specifically about how these policies happening now affect them directly and will affect their fiscal future and the economic future when they're raising their children, then it becomes personal. And I think that's how you have to connect to the millennial generation, and that's how the Republican Party will have a chance.
All right. I agree with half of what you say, which means you're half right. I'm completely right. Your great-grandfather will be incredibly proud.